Okay, so you want to own a dry dock. Here is the pitch, and it sounds almost illegal. You own a concrete hole in the ground next to the ocean. Every large commercial ship on the planet, all 50,000 of them, is required by international law to come to a hole like yours twice every 5 years. Not encouraged. Required. Around 30,000 of these visits happen worldwide every single year, and a single visit from a big ship can bill $3 to $5 million. Your customers are delivered to you by regulation, on a schedule, forever. And yet almost nobody builds these things, because the hole costs more than the ships inside it. The US Navy is currently digging one at Pearl Harbor for $3.4 billion, with the total investment expected to reach around $4.2 billion. The nuclear attack submarine, it is being built to service costs about $3.5 billion. The parking space costs more than the vehicle. By the end of this video, you will understand why the law is the greatest sales department ever invented, and why it still is not enough to make people build dry docks. You will understand why your real product is not repair, and not even the dock, but a date on a calendar. You will understand how a hole dug when Andrew Jackson was president is still earning money 190 years later. And you will understand how a dry dock dies, not by breaking, but by standing still while its customers grow. Start with what this thing actually is, because the mechanics are the business. A dry dock is the only place on Earth where a ship can be worked on below the waterline. The classic version, the graving dock, is a giant excavated basin with a gate at the sea end. The ship floats in, the gate closes, and the water is pumped out until 100,000 tons of steel settles onto a line of wooden and concrete blocks positioned to match its hull. What was an ocean-going vessel an hour ago is now, functionally, a building. Workers walk under it. And for the next 2 to 4 weeks, everything that is normally hidden under the sea, the hull plating, the propeller, the rudder, the sea chests, is exposed, blasted, measured, and repainted. That window is where the money is. A routine docking for a mid-sized tanker runs somewhere between $1.5 and $3.5 million. For a very large crude carrier or a giant container ship, a single stay can pass $4 million, and heavy special surveys are commonly quoted at $3 to $5 million, with 25 to 30 days in the dock. Industry planning figures suggest a ship owner needs to reserve roughly $900,000 to $1.4 million per year, per ship, just to be ready for these visits. Multiply that across a fleet, and across the world fleet, and you get the size of the pool you would be fishing in. Ship repair and maintenance is estimated at roughly $39 billion a year, and the dry docking slice alone at around $15 billion, the single largest piece of the market. And the invoice itself is a work of art, because almost nothing on it is the repair. The ship pays to enter. It pays dock dues for every day it sits on the blocks. It pays for the tugs that pushed it in, the pumps that emptied the basin, the crane hours, the shore power, the fresh water, the fire watch, the scaffolding, the compressed air. Then come the surveys themselves. Hull plates measured point by point for thickness, because steel that has spent 30 months in salt water is thinner than the steel that left the last docking. And the classification surveyor decides, plate by plate, what gets cropped out and renewed. This is the moment every ship owner fears, the moment the quoted price becomes the real price. The blasting takes the paint off, the gauging takes the measurements, and a docking that was budgeted at $2 million quietly becomes $3.5. Unplanned findings routinely add 5 to 15 days to a stay. For the owner, that is a disaster on 2 clocks at once. For you, the owner of the hole, it is the best kind of revenue. Unplanned, unarguable, and impossible to take elsewhere, because the ship is sitting on your blocks with its bottom exposed and its certificates hostage. Now ask the obvious question. Why does the ship owner pay it? Nobody volunteers to take a working ship out of service for a month. They pay because they have no choice. And this is the part of the business that sounds too good to be true. Under the SOLAS Convention, the international safety framework that governs commercial shipping, a cargo ship must have its underwater hull inspected out of the water at least twice in every 5-year cycle, with no more than 3 years between visits. The classification societies that certify ships build their entire survey system around it. The intermediate survey around year 2.5, the special survey at year 5. Miss the window and the consequences cascade. The class certificate lapses. The insurance is compromised. Port states can detain the ship. A vessel without valid class is, commercially, not a ship anymore. It is scrap metal with a crew, so look at what you are actually selling. Not repairs, any yard can weld. You are selling the only legal path to keep a $100 million asset allowed to exist. The law does your marketing, your lead generation, and your closing, and it never takes a holiday. Roughly 30,000 times a year, somewhere in the world, a ship owner looks at a calendar, sighs, and books a hole in the ground. But here's the first thing that should make you pause. If the customers are compulsory and the fees are in the millions, why is the market not flooded with new docks? Because the barrier to entry is not a barrier. It is a wall with no visible top. A modern commercial repair yard with deep water berths and a serious dock is an investment routinely quoted north of $100 million before the first ship arrives. And at the extreme end, the numbers stop resembling business and start resembling national policy. The Navy's new Dry Dock 5 at Pearl Harbor, a hole in the ground, remember, carries a maximum contract value of $3.4 billion, is the first new dock built there since 1943, and is designed for a 150-year service life. Its sister project at Portsmouth Naval Shipyard in Maine runs $1.7 billion. The four public Navy shipyards together sit inside a modernization plan estimated at $21 billion. When a dock costs billions and pays back over a century, you are not making an investment decision. You are making a bet that the ocean will still matter in the year 2170. There is, in theory, a cheaper way in. Instead of digging, you can buy a floating dry dock, a giant steel platform that submerges, slides under a ship, and lifts it clear of the water. Floating docks are their own several billion-dollar market, and for smaller vessels, they are the sensible answer. Cheaper to build, movable, sellable. But notice what happens at the top of the size range, where the real fees live. The floating dock is itself a steel hull sitting in salt water, which means the machine you use to survey ships needs its own surveys, its own maintenance, its own eventual replacement. The granite hull does not. That is why the biggest, longest-lived, most valuable docks in the world are still the ones somebody dug, and why the floating option, for all its flexibility, has never broken the scarcity at the heavy end of the market. The cheap way in exists. It just does not lead to where the money is. Strangely enough, the expensive bet has a habit of paying. In 1834, the United States opened a dry dock at the Gosport Yard in Virginia, built from Massachusetts granite. Andrew Jackson was president. The ships it served were made of wood and moved by wind. That dock, Dry Dock Number 1 at what is now Norfolk Naval Shipyard, is still in operation today, the oldest continuously operating dry dock in the country. Before docks like it existed, the only way to reach a ship's bottom was careening, hauling the vessel over onto its side on a beach and working on one half of the hull at a time, straining the structure so badly that the repair itself caused damage. The granite basin ended that with a gate and a pump. Every technology that has touched it since has died. Sail gave way to steam, steam to diesel, wood to iron to steel, and the whole has outlived all of them, 190 years of ships settling onto its blocks. Commodore Perry steamed out of that same yard in 1851 on his way to open Japan. There are very few assets on Earth that survive their fifth generation of customers. A well-built hull is one of them. And that is only half of the structure, because the dock itself is not the scarce thing. The scarce thing is the date. A dry dock can hold one ship at a time. A docking takes 2 to 4 weeks, longer when the blasting reveals what the owner hoped it would not. Which means even a busy dock produces only somewhere between 15 and 25 slots a year. That is the entire inventory. Not steel, not labor, not paint. Slots. And the queue for those slots is now measured in years. The big Asian yards, which handle more than half of all dry docking volume worldwide, are running order backlogs of 3 to 4 years because new build construction competes with repair work for the same docks, the same cranes, and the same welders. Meanwhile, the shipowner's clock is ticking on 2 schedules at once. The legal one, because the survey window is closing, and the financial one, because a large ship that is not sailing burns money at a brutal rate. Delay figures in the industry run from $25,000 to $75,000 per day in lost operations. A ship that waits 2 extra weeks for a dock slot can lose $1 million without a single repair being done. Now you see the real business. When the law forces 50,000 ships through a gate that only opens 30,000 times a year, the man who owns the gate does not compete on price. He competes on the calendar. The premium is not for the work. The premium is for the date. It is the Panama Canal auction all over again. Poured in concrete. The scarcity is the product, and the scarcity is structural, because the only way to add supply is to spend a decade and $1 billion digging. Which is why the money that is entering this business now is not looking at repairs at all. It is looking at retrofits. The shipping industry is being pushed by emissions regulation into the largest refit wave in its history. Scrubber installations, LNG conversions, energy-saving devices, alternative propulsion. Estimates put the green retrofit investment pool at over $180 billion between 2025 and 2035. Every single one of those conversions needs a dock slot. The same hole, the same gate, an entirely new decade of compulsory demand, this time driven not by rust, but by carbon. So where is the catch? Because by now this should feel suspicious. Compulsory customers, million-dollar invoices, structural scarcity, 150-year asset life. Somewhere, this has to break. It breaks in the one place you cannot repair. The dimensions. A dry dock is the only business whose product can become obsolete while remaining in perfect working order. The hull does not wear out, the customers outgrow it. At Pearl Harbor, Dry Dock 3 was finished in 1919 and still functions exactly as designed. It is being replaced anyway because the Navy's Virginia-class submarines are too deep and too wide to fit inside it. The dock did not fail. The fleet grew past it. And the entire $3.4 billion bill for Dry Dock 5 exists because you cannot renovate a hole into being bigger. You can only dig a new one. The commercial fleet has been doing the same thing to civilian docks for decades. Container ships have roughly tripled in size in a generation. Every jump in vessel dimensions quietly kills a tier of the world's docks. Not by bankrupting them, but by demoting them. The dock that hosted the largest ships afloat in 1995 now services the mid-market, at mid-market rates, while the premium traffic sails past to the handful of basins big enough to take it. Your asset can lose its best customers without a single crack in the concrete. The threat is not decay. The threat is that steel floats in and measures you. And that is the strange, patient shape of this whole business. It moves at a speed no other industry tolerates. Your asset takes half a decade to build and pays back over a century. Your inventory is 20 dates a year. Your demand is written into international law and arrives every 30 months, forever. Your growth market is regulation itself. And your only mortal enemy is a naval architect somewhere, right now, drawing a hole 18 inches wider than your gate. So here's what you would actually be buying. A concrete basin that costs from $100 million to $4.2 billion to create and is designed to outlive your great-great-grandchildren, serving 50,000 ships that are legally compelled to visit twice every 5 years, in a global market of roughly $39 billion a year, where the docking slice alone is about $15 billion, selling an inventory of perhaps 20 slots a year into queues now stretching 3 to 4 years, to customers who lose up to $75,000 for every day they wait, with a $180 billion wave of mandatory green refits rolling toward your gate. And all of it protected by the simple fact that your only competitor is someone willing to spend 10 years and $1 billion digging a hole next to yours. The law fills your order book. The physics empties the water. The granite does not age. The only question is the one Pearl Harbor just paid $3.4 billion to answer. How long until the ships outgrow you? You decide.